The CEO's thinking, everybody agrees with me. I can speak out and they're going to agree. That's the risk. That's what this study shows, is that when you speak out on a controversial social issue, one of the risks of doing that, you're going to tick off half the people.
Welcome to the Tippie Leads podcast. Stories from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business that will change the way you work and lead. Produced by the Tippie Leadership Collaborative. I'm your host, Nick Westergaard. I teach at Tippie and lead our Story Lab program. This podcast provides another opportunity to share stories from Tippie with our community and beyond. Each season of Tippie Leads, we focus on a grand challenge in today's changing world of work. This season, we're looking at risk. So far, we've explored big picture risks, natural disasters, political shifts, and even everyday dangers like driving, along with the challenges entrepreneurs face. But CEOs encounter a different kind of risk, the growing pressure to speak out on social and political issues. In this episode, Tippie's Michael Durney breaks down the high-stakes decisions leaders make in these moments. We'll also hear from Robin Therme, president of CIVCO Medical Solutions, on the tough conversations that have defined her leadership and what she's learned along the way. And finally, we'll bring it all together with a final tip-e just for you. Ready? Let's get started. Michael Durney is an assistant professor of accounting at the Tippie College of Business. His research explores judgment and decision-making in financial reporting with a focus on CEO activism, investor behavior, and selective disclosure. He previously held a postdoctoral fellowship at the Financial Accounting Standards Board and earned his PhD in accounting from Cornell University. A licensed CPA, Durney has published in contemporary accounting research and management science and has received multiple awards for his teaching and research. Michael Durney, we've heard all about your background and research, but to look at it another way, say you're at a conference networking and you meet someone new and want to describe what your research is all about. How would you explain it quickly at a cocktail party?
Well, not many people at cocktail parties want to hear about accounting research, but that's when you say the word accounting, people normally shut off. I think it's good to have big picture accounting. And what I mean by that is anytime performance is being reported. And so you can think of that, that ranges a lot of different ways. In the paper we're talking about today, CEOs talking to investors or to the public, that counts as performance reporting in the sense that what a CEO says goes for the company, right? So
Right.
That is in big picture accounting, but it even extends beyond that. It can get technical, which most people would agree is accounting research, like what are the generally accepted accounting principles changes that the Financial Accounting Standards Board is thinking about. Now, you see, as soon as I said those words, the cocktail party guest just left me. But that's sort of more traditional accounting. But it can even extend to something that we all have experience with. This is not my research, but I have colleagues who look at the cost of hospital procedures and how that's communicated. That's financial information, and we all deal with that as patients at hospitals. So that counts as accounting. Anytime there's financial information, performance information being reported, accounting happens. And so that's where I'd start with the cocktail guest. And if they're still there, maybe I'd go a little more detail.
Well, they're fascinating topics, but it is funny when you label them as accounting, you might lose the audience at the cocktail party. But that's exactly what they are. And in talking about the paper that you alluded to earlier, certainly there's been a feeling over the past few years that what's labeled as CEO activism is on the rise. And you took a look at what that meant when it comes to the impact of that on performance as well. Take us through what you found.
Yeah, we were attracted to this because we saw it happening. And then the first question from our standpoint was, how do investors react? And so in some ways, you might expect investors not to react at all. Why would they care if the CEO is talking about an unrelated social issue? If the company has nothing to do with, say, firearm sales and they're talking about gun control, or it's not in the healthcare space and they're talking about abortion, why would that have anything to do with their operations? If an investor only cares about the economic consequences of the CEO's actions for the firm, then maybe there would be no effect of CEO activism on investor response. So that's sort of the null hypothesis, we might say. There might be no effect. It doesn't matter what a CEO says about controversial social issue A, because it doesn't affect the firm. But turns out investors are humans too, and we tend to like people who think like us. And so the first result we show is when investors agree with the CEO on a controversial social issue, they want to buy more stock. And the reverse, when they disagree, they want to sell. So in some ways, though, that's not the most surprising result. If you agree, you buy more. If you disagree, you sell. But what about if the CEO is quiet? What about even if prompted, even if somebody says, hey, CEO, tell me what you think about gun control. And the CEO punts. The CEO declines to answer, says some fluff and moves on, dodges the question. What's going to happen then? Because CEOs are in this position all the time, right? They have people call them out, saying on Twitter especially, which is not Twitter anymore, X, social media, they're called out all the time. What do? Especially if they're worried that if they say something, they might tick some people off. Well, if they're dodging, that might be looked at as particularly poor behavior because you're not even answering the question. Well, here's the most surprising result of the paper. When the CEO dodges, everybody projects their view onto the CEO, and they all think the CEO agrees with them. And you do just as well as if every single investor agreed. Now, that is a world that you never are in. Think of investor base; they're just like the general public, right? They some of them agree, some of them want more gun control, some of them want less, some of them want to allow more abortion, some of them want to allow less. It's you never have everybody agree, and so here you have this setting where you can get everybody to project their view as if they act as if they agree with the CEO. It's wild.
That is amazing. It's a little good old fashioned cognitive bias, right? Of we think if they say nothing, they must agree with me as well.
Yes, we tend to want to project our views on others, and so unless we have some evidence to the contrary, we assume that others agree with us.
I want to back up just a little bit because when we talk about social issues, certainly there are a lot of them. How did you define them, and was there any variance in the type of social issue and what you saw?
It's a great question. Hard to choose one social issue because social issues are obviously so unique and different. If you think of the ESG space, environmental social governance, those are all could be controversial issues. We wanted to choose one that was controversial, that you could almost draw a line down the country half and half, because those are ones where we saw CEOs speaking out, and those are the ones where it's the most interesting. If I say, I love clean water, nobody's going to disagree with that. And so that's an important issue, but it's not one that people disagree with. So it's not really an interesting one to investigate. Instead, we looked at some Pew Research polls. What are the hottest topics, the ones where you have the biggest disagreements in the country? Gun control, abortion, those were near the top. So those are the two issues that we looked at specifically in this paper. Our theory would suggest other controversial social topics would be the same. Immigration is sometimes a hot topic. There are others. But we chose gun control and abortion. And there's 2 experiments reported in the paper, but we've done more than that with gun control. So the gun control results, that's I've already sort of explained the results, but that's where we find you agree, you buy more, you sell, you buy less. And if you say nothing, it's just as good as if everybody agrees with you. That result is basically the same in the abortion case with one small difference. The CEO punting isn't quite as good as if every single investor agreed with you. It's close. It's very close, but it's not the same. And so you wonder, is there something different? I mean, this is your question, right? Is there something different about about abortion versus gun control? Turns out that there's probably a million things. One of them is the status quo recently changed right before we ran the abortion. Status quo for gun control has largely remained the same.
Right.
Despite all of the things that have happened, it's largely the same. Abortion, though, the Supreme Court ruling that rolled back Roe v. Wade, that happened before we ran the abortion experiment. And so the changing of the status quo could have something to do with the reason why we didn't have the complete view projection result, where if the CEO punts, everybody acts as if the CEO agrees with them. We didn't have that perfectly. The results are pretty close enough that they were able to publish them for us here in the journal. But there's some slight differences, and there could be others. If we had, unlimited time and resources, maybe we would investigate every single controversial social issue. But we just stuck with these 2. Results are largely consistent overall.
The other thing I wanted to touch on that you alluded to earlier, but that you also found in the paper, we talked about, CEOs being, asked to engage or called out. And say again what you found on the subject of external prompts.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. In a paper or in an experiment that's not reported in this paper, the initial experiment, we didn't have CEOs being prompted. It was just a CEO giving out a tweet saying, I support gun control, I support more gun control, I support less gun control, or punting, without being prompted by anybody. And then the journal shot back and said, interesting, really interesting. We like these interesting results, especially the surprising part when they punt, everybody acts like they agree with them. However, we think it could be more interesting if you investigate what happens when somebody calls them out, because then punting has the potential to be detrimental. And so that's exactly what we did. We brought in this variable where an investor asks the CEO and says, hey, tell me what you think about this. So now punting could be viewed as a negative thing. No change. That's the crazy thing. No change. We ran it twice. We were surprised. Reviewers were surprised. But the results are robust. Turns out, even when prompted, people are giving CEOs the benefit of the doubt, and they're saying, oh, whatever, you're punting. And I think it might be, Nick, because everybody knows this is a controversial social issue. Everybody knows you're wading into a quagmire. I think it's something that could be investigated more, but we found no evidence of a prompt mattering at all.
Wow. So leaders listening and thinking about this said at the jump here that kind of the conventional wisdom feels as though people are looking to organizations, are looking to leaders to take stands on social issues. We know that younger employees in the workforce are looking for that as well. But seeing this research, what kind of risk calculation is a leader supposed to run on when to speak up and when not to?
It's a hard choice. And I wish we had all the answers in this paper. this is just one small piece of the puzzle, right? This is just how investors, and I would stress retail investors at that. These are retail investors. These aren't professional investors. Retail investors tend to approximate more of like consumer base, employee base, rather than professional investors. But it's just a small piece of the puzzle. If you are very concerned about retail investors' reactions, this paper would suggest it's best to just manage your company and leave the social commentary on controversial issues to someone else. Now, I want to stress there are many reasons why you might want to, a CEO might want to speak out on social controversial issues. It's an important issue. You care about it for society. And in some cases, you might be willing to take the hit. In other words, you might be willing to take the hit that half of your investors, half of your consumers, half of your employees will disagree with you. Because that's the risk.
Yeah.
You speak out on this, you're going to tick off half the country. That's the definition of a controversial social issue. And I think, just like the investors in our study, where when the CEO didn't say anything, they assumed the CEO agreed with them. You know what the CEO is doing? The CEO is thinking, everybody agrees with me. I can speak out and they're going to agree. No, that's the risk. That's what this study shows, is that when you speak out on a controversial social issue, you're going to tick off half the people. And maybe you're okay with that. Maybe the issue is important enough for you that you're okay speaking out. I think that CEOs should still feel entitled and motivated to speak out on issues they want to speak out. This is just showing one of the costs, one of the risks of doing that. You're going to tick off half the people.
Michael's research sheds light on the high-stakes decisions CEOs face when navigating public controversy. But those aren't the only tough calls leaders have to make. To explore the personal side of risk in the C-suite, we turn to Robin Therme, president of CIVCO Medical Solutions, a Tippie MBA alum, and member of the Tippie Advisory Board. Robin joined CIVCO when it was a founder-led startup and has held leadership roles across marketing, business development, and operations. Now, as president, she leads with a focus on mission, culture, and community engagement, earning CIVCO recognition as one of the coolest places to work. She's even co-taught a leadership and personal development class at Tippie. Recently, Robin invited me out to CIVCO's new facility in Coralville, where she shared how she's approached difficult conversations, the lessons she's learned, and what it takes to lead with clarity and conviction when the stakes are high.
My name is Robin Therme, and I'm the president of CIVCO Medical Solutions. You know, I have to be careful about that because I'm a pretty direct communicator, and I can't always say the first thing that comes to mind. I guess that's my first filter, is to stop myself and just kind of think through how the message is going to be received and the tone of the message. And that would be my primary focus, I think, when I'm thinking about delivering a message. I would say one of the things that came out 10 years, it wasn't until like 10 years ago, I did a Myers-Briggs and personality profile. And through the course of my career, I've done different types of those things. But I sat down with a coach, and they just talk you through it and kind of what that means and how you communicate, how you work. And the thing that really stuck out to me, one of the things that really stuck out to me was how direct I am, and that I don't have it in my makeup to be manipulative or conniving or be political. I can't play that game. And so I guess some self-awareness about that, not that I want to be manipulative or play games, but just be aware that I'm coming across that way to people, and thinking about how that is being received. So we did an exercise as a leadership team, and we all did it. And then we kind of came together and talked about that and what it meant. So I think it helped maybe modify me jumping right away to answering a question or, giving more thought to how I do it. We called it our kumbaya moment, but it was having that awareness, and you had some aha moments because we've all worked together for a long time, and we thought we got along great, and we do get along great, but we all had things about each other that were kind of, just in the back of our minds thinking, oh, that's just driving me nuts about that person, and we just talked about it. So having the ability to have a open and honest communication with somebody and giving them feedback and understanding how they're receiving the feedback, understanding how you're delivering it, it just can go a long way. You get to know the person a little better, but also you're being respectful. You're not attacking people personally. It's about, just kind of thinking about your approach. And I'm not saying that you have to modify what you do for everybody because you are who you are, but there's also somebody else receiving it. And so I think it's very respectful to just have an understanding of that. And sometimes you can just say it a little differently so that it's going to be received in a better way. You're doing yourself and the other person a disservice if you can't have an open and honest communication style. And I think it's something that we've worked on as an organization, not just the leadership team, but making sure everybody in the company is comfortable with asking a tough question. I meet with people all across the organization on a regular basis to make sure they're comfortable asking me tough questions and helping them understand and see that it's a safe space to ask that question or to give that feedback. I have people call me out on things all the time, and I appreciate it. I mean, my first response isn't necessarily appreciation, but, because you want to jump to be defensive, but I stopped myself. I'm like, oh yeah, they're right. That's how they received that. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's helped me, I think, be better. I do monthly huddles. I do bi-weekly round robins, we call them, where I'm meeting with different people across the organization. And it's helped me make those even more meaningful conversations, and the information that I'm delivering and how I do it is, I think, better. I think the biggest one that came to mind would be when I had to announce to our Kelowna team that we were moving a big portion of our manufacturing to a plant in Mexico. It was a really hard message to deliver. It was about 11 years ago. And again, I'm a pretty direct communicator. We had a script all laid out, and it was kind of before I went in, I just wadded it up, and, you speak from your heart. And I think it went a lot better by doing it that way. Certainly sometimes I'm better scripted, and my team knows that too. But it was just a time where people saw if I was, it touched me. It was hard news to deliver, but I also made a promise to them, and I kept it about how we were going to do it. And we treated people very fairly. In the end, I think I had to reduce, it was something like 10 or 12 people. So it wasn't huge in the grand scheme of things. I've got 400 people in a plant. We'd already outsourced part of that business. So taking them through the context of how we got to there, and also everything that I evaluated up until that point that brought me to that decision, I helped them understand it the way how I arrived at the decision. And they really appreciated that. And it was, a long timeline. I did the same thing with our move to Coralville. We're in the middle of moving all of our operations from Kelowna to up here. And I told them we were doing this 2 years ago. So it's been a long runway, and I haven't lost that many people. And I knew I would. That was a risk that we were taking, but it was what the company needed to do. And again, I just walked them through I evaluated all of these different options, and this was the one that I arrived at that was the best that I felt was the best for the organization. I'm one of the biggest procrastinators too, and I found that you just have to do it and make it short. Don't it's kind of like if you have to terminate people, you're going to come across that point in your time. It's hard news to receive. It's hard news to deliver. You do it quickly, and let the questions come later. Let the emotions get resolved, and you can come back to the table at a later time and have maybe a more meaningful conversation. But you need to just don't put it off. It just makes it worse when it comes to that time. So, and to just be straightforward about it. You don't want to mince words, but you can do it in a respectful way and a conversational way, and not attack people on a personal level.
That was Robin Therme, president of CIVCO Medical Solutions and a member of the Tippie Advisory Board. Before we wrap up, let's go back to Michael Durney one last time for a final tip for you to remember in your work.
I think one thing to remember is that, as we point out in our study, people want leaders to speak out on important issues. And so then that sort of seems at odds maybe with the punchline of this paper that highlights the cost of speaking out on important issues. So my takeaway might be a little bit counterintuitive to hear from a researcher, but in some ways, don't let this one study stop you from speaking out on important social issues. Maybe consider the cost, but don't let it stop you. That's point number one. Point number two, if you want to speak out on social issues, important social issues, you can do so in a way that lots of people agree with. You can highlight things that you're doing for clean water, clean air that people agree with. You can talk about things you're doing to help children in the community, to help decrease socioeconomic inequality. There are a lot of issues that you can speak out on that matter that most people aren't going to have issue with. So to the extent that you want to speak out, speak out. Consider the cost potentially from this study. But also you can select the topics and select the ways you talk about them in an effort not to tick off half of your constituents, half of your investors, half of your employees, half of your customers.
Speaking out on social issues is a major risk for CEOs, but you don't have to be in the corner office to face the risks of speaking up. Many employees don't feel safe sharing ideas or concerns with leadership. So what's at stake when they do? How can those risks be reduced? And what can leaders do to build a culture where speaking up isn't just allowed, but encouraged and expected? In our final episode of the season, we turn to Tippie's Daniel Newton to explore these important questions. This episode of Tippie Leads was written and produced by me, Nick Westergaard, and Steve Courtwright. Special thanks to Michael Durney and Robin Therme for taking the risk of sharing their stories. Tippie Leads is a production of the Tippie Leadership Collaborative. To learn more, go to tippie.uiowa.edu/Tippie Leads. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or coworker, or better yet, subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. And if you're feeling generous, consider leaving us a rating or review to help others find the show. This is Nick Westergaard signing off. On behalf of everyone at Tippie, thanks for listening, and go Hawks!